Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today and happy Women's History Month. My name is Jen Mathews. I work on the corporate communications team here at LogMeIn, and I'm going to be moderating our conversation today about how we can enable women to succeed in this modern remote workforce. Before we start our conversation, we are going to kick things off with a quick welcome video from us at LogMeIn. In the video and the slides that you're seeing up here and throughout, we have this Choose to Challenge hashtag. And if you're not aware, this is the 2021 campaign theme for International Women's Day. And it's something that really resonated with us. We feel it's actionable and we can all choose to challenge in our own unique way. So make sure your computer speakers are turned up and let's do it.
Es ist 2021 und wir leben und arbeiten in einem modernen Arbeitsumfeld.
We know that a challenged world is an alert world.
I believe individually we are all responsible for our own thoughts and actions. All day, every day.
We can all choose to challenge gender bias and inequality.
Todos podemos escoger, buscar y celebrar los logros de las mujeres.
Collectively, we can all help create an inclusive world.
Choose to challenge.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's great to see women and allies from around the globe committing to choose to challenge in a way that's meaningful for them. So thank you, and let's get into it. This last year has been full of unexpected challenges. I don't think that's a surprise to hear, but what is shocking is how these challenges were often disproportionately felt by women. Whether you were somebody with roommates and at a shortage of space and quite literally nowhere to escape, whether you were someone living alone and perhaps facing isolation, or I have a whole new respect for mothers who are pulling double duty like never before. They're teachers, they are short order cooks, they are housekeepers. And categories or another, the simple truth is that many of us are doing it all plus working full-time jobs for home, and it's not always a great life-work balance. As a result of these dynamics, and many of these staggering stats that you see up on this slide now, more than 1 in 4 women are contemplating downshifting their careers or leaving the workforce altogether. And this number jumps to 1 in 3 when you look at women who are mothers. Obviously, this would have huge implications in terms of companies losing great employees, of companies losing great women leaders. Not to mention, it's going to take us a huge step back, or it could take us a huge step back in any progress that we've made towards gender equality. So this is our time to act. As we look at what the new normal looks like coming out of a post-pandemic world, this is our chance to stop any of that backward progress in its tracks. This is our chance to choose to challenge and all of what's going on. And it's really our chance to step up and to help those who need it most. Which is why I am very excited today to be joined by an amazing group of women who have lots of advice to offer on this very topic. So we'll start by introducing our panelists. Sonu, we'll start with you. I'd love to hear a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then if you could tell us when you knew supporting women in the workforce would become your calling.
Sure, I'm so thrilled to be here with you, Sandra, Ginger, and Jen. I'm Sonu Ratra. I'm the co-founder of Akraya and founder of Women Back to Work. Akraya is ranked amongst the top 50 women-owned businesses in the US. Very proud of that. Ranked as Glassdoor's best places to work and Silicon Valley's best places to work for 5 consecutive years. I've had the privilege of building a successful and thriving business thanks to an exceptional team. But what I'm most incredibly proud of is our sense of social responsibility and giving back and our core values. And I love that question, when was that calling? When did it come to you? For me, it came on very, very early in life. When I was about 5 years old, my mother was paralyzed with a spinal cord tumor that left her paralyzed for the rest of her life. And despite all the adversities and all the challenges, she raised my sister and myself to, be fearless and not give up in the face of challenges. And I think that taught me a lot. While being bedridden, she fought amazingly for, or towards gender bias or just for women. So for me, it came on very, very early in life because I was seeing someone firsthand supporting other women, and I saw other women supporting this woman who couldn't walk. And I learned that our greatness is not achieved by what we have, what we receive, but it is rather earned by the ripples you create in other people's life. And for me, it has been women. So I think for me that came on, and of course now it is women in the workforce, because that's how I have evolved into, and that's how my business has evolved into.
Awesome. How about Sandra? We'll go to you next.
Thanks, Jen. So my name is Sandra. I am a Senior Director of Product Management here at LogMeIn, responsible for our meetings business. And I have been a woman working in a tech space for most of my career. It's definitely an interesting place to work in. And we know the statistics, Jen, you showed them earlier. And I'm really happy to be joining the conversation with you and Sonu and Ginger today. As far as where I got my calling, I think for me, it's this intersection between supporting women and then leadership within the workplace. So for me, my moment of clarity, that moment that made it click for me, was early on in my career, before I was even a manager, was in a team, and I was friends with one of my colleagues, and they had announced that there was going to be an open leadership position for our team coming up. And I thought, wow, that's great. I wonder who'll get it. Surely whoever's been working really, really hard. They said they're going to look internally. And then a couple of days later, my friend came to me and he's like, hey, Sandra, can I give you a secret? And I'm like, yeah, sure. What's up? And he's like, I'm going to be the manager. I said, really? Wow. Did they let you know? And he said, Sandra, I had a smoke with the hiring manager on the balcony and told them I was interested. And I thought that was that moment for me where I realized, okay, it's not what I thought. You don't get jobs because you don't get a promotion because you do a good job always. You sometimes get it just because of who you know and because you happen to ask for it. And that was the moment where I said, okay, this is now personally affecting me. This is something I want to share this with other people. This is new for me. I want to empower other people with this knowledge. And that's kind of what kicked me off on where I'm at. So as a female leader today, that's something I still feel very passionately and strongly about, is advocating for yourself and asking. Don't be afraid to ask.
That's good advice. And last but not least, Ginger.
Thank you so much, Jen. It is a pleasure for me to be here today with Sonu and Sandra and all of our attendees today. My name is Ginger Miller, and I'm the founder and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Women Veterans Interactive. I started the nonprofit because I had a personal hardship where I didn't transition well out of the military. I was also a caregiver. My husband was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. I got a medical discharge, and I'll make this part quick. We became homeless, and I think it was what I went through as a homeless woman veteran, someone who have served and sacrificed for our country. I didn't find the support that I needed during that transition. I hit rock bottom totally. Worked 3 jobs and went to school full time to pull us out of that homeless state. And then along the journey of coming back from that and moving my family from New York to Maryland, I wanted to dedicate my life to supporting all veterans that didn't have a strong support system. And then that turned into starting Women Veterans Interactive, because I realized that, okay, I'm a woman, I'm a disabled veteran, I'm a mother, caregiver, wife, commissioner, all these great titles. And the last thing that popped into my mind was woman veteran. So it was that point later on in my life that connected to the point where I became homeless earlier in my life. They said, wait a minute, you really need to take all of your focus versus trying to go and be this fancy accountant on Wall Street. You need to take all of your focus and support women veterans who need support in the workplace. Because if I would have had the support when I was homeless, someone would have told me, instead of you working 3 part-time jobs and going to school full-time, why don't you work full-time and go to school part-time? So that's why, I just find it really important, and it is my life's work to support women veterans. Thank you.
Amazing. You guys have 3 totally different backgrounds, but I'm really excited about what it's going to bring to this conversation, because I think you all do come at it from a very unique perspective, and that's what we need. So what I'm hearing a lot in your intros is sort of how the culture around you, or a big change around you, really impacted your desire to help others. So why don't we start there with some questions on culture? I think in this past year, the culture has really shifted as we've all moved to primarily remote work. So we'll start with that. So maybe Sonu, you can take this first one, but everyone should feel free to jump on too. Remote work has been a complete shift in how we live and how we work. What new challenges are women facing with this remote work, and how do you sort of prepare them or overcome those challenges?
Well, I'll give our example. Most of our workforce at Akraya and Women Back to Work is women, and they're in the age bracket that they have younger kids, right? So, and they have, of course, we are pet moms, etc. And so the challenges that they face, so as leaders, we have to. We've realized that you need to create a flexible work environment for them because that's not available anymore because they can't come into the office and sit on their desk and work all day long, right? That's not going to happen. And we've also realized that, you could give companies can give all the best perks, but that really doesn't matter. What really matters is what the tone the leaders set and the behavior that leaders model. We don't want to make it normal for people to work all through the weekend because women can't do that. Have families, and that's a challenge they're facing, especially because there's no boundaries between the work and home. We as leaders cannot glamorize working long hours. You don't want to expect women to be online all the time. So it's not so much about policy. It's not so much about perks. It's about how you set behaviors and how you set the tone as leaders. So it's important that women, so the challenges women are facing today, they need flexible flexible work policies. So it's all about the culture and where women can determine their hours they work, they can take care of the kids, and I think that's very important. And I give you an example. We have a new mom. She went on maternity leave just right after COVID. She came back last week, and there are calls that she just cannot make it, and we're wondering where she is. And in any other normal times, we would have thought, well, I don't know why she's not on the call, but I think we have to step back, be sympathetic, be patient, and think about, well, she has a baby, and the baby is not going to wonder who's on the next call or what's, whether this is a marketing call. So I think those are things that you really have to think about as you start to support women who are facing, just like you said, Jen, just challenges we've never faced before.
So you touched on a little bit about the leader aspect of it and how leaders can set the right tone. Sandra, I'd love to maybe hear from you a little bit on, as we return to the next normal or the new normal, whatever you want to call it. You're leading a team of mostly men, and as you mentioned, a role that's dominated by men in many cases. How do you sort of set those tone, and how do you trickle down the tone you're setting to the rest of your organization?
It's interesting. I'm in the situation where even before we went fully remote with the pandemic, I anyway had kind of a remote team. Not everybody's in the same country. I'm based in Germany. I've got employees in the US. We're everywhere. But even with that shift, one of the things that I noticed right away and that I felt very strongly is I feel very strongly as a leader that I need to model the kind of behaviors I expect from my employees. And I loved what Sonu was saying, because there tends to be this overemphasis or over-indexing on being always available means that you're the best employee. And I don't agree with that. I think it's more about how effective you are. Are you getting the work done? It should matter than when you're doing it, or if you dropped off for an hour to take care of something in your home or to take care of your child. As long as you're getting it done, however works for you, should be fine. But we as leaders tend not to reflect the problems we're going through. So since the beginning of the pandemic, if any of my team is on the call, they know this. I'm trying to be as real as I possibly can with my employees and the people reporting to me. And for the managers reporting to me, I ask them to do the same for their employees. If you're sick, you're sick. If you're having a day where you don't feel like being on camera, don't turn on the camera. If you need to eat something while you're in a meeting because you got double booked, go on mute, turn off the camera and eat something. Like, please take care of yourself. Like we need to have that human empathy and just realize that we're not just meeting with employees anymore, we're meeting with people. One of the conversations we had recently, Jen, we were talking about coming into people's living rooms, coming into people's kitchens, coming into people's dining rooms or bedrooms. That's not a normal situation, and we just need to be a little bit more open to the idea that we're working with humans and we need to be real, and it's okay to admit that you need help. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to just get into a call and talk about the weather or what you saw on TV last night, or we do icebreakers with my team meeting. It's, what's your favorite kind of chips? We got some interesting answers on that. That real factor has to come back in. It can't be over-indexed to 8 hours of meetings back to back and you have no time to be human anymore.
What do you, so that aspect of coming into each other's living rooms or bedrooms or kitchens or basement or whatever it is, I think is really interesting. For better, for worse, we've all gotten to know a little bit more about the people we work with because of that. What advice would you give to people who are maybe concerned that they're going to make a bad impression if a kid or a dog or a spouse runs in the background, or like I was on a meeting the other day and somebody's shelf just fell off the wall, and like it was okay, but you could tell they were a little thrown. What, open this up to anyone. What advice would you give them how to balance that professionalism versus perfection, I guess?
I'll take a shot at this one, and I just wanted to piggyback off of what Sonu and Sandra had said. COVID-19 made us all real. And, as a leader, for me, I just see myself in other people. I think we are all more empathetic to what people are going through in their own households. For me personally, having all my meetings remote, I'm not going to say it put a lot of pressure on me, but we've already talked about this, but I like to be presentable. I mean, that's who I am. I'm representing a nonprofit organization for a population that doesn't get a lot of support. So, I just feel as a woman veteran, I need to show up. Is there pressure? Sure. I think sometimes we put undue pressure on ourselves, but with COVID-19, I think, as the other ladies already said, it just made everything so real. I'm sitting here now, sure, I'm all glammed up and I'm ready to answer the question. And I'm looking at my cat like, now is not the time for you to jump on this desk. So you talk about somebody's shelf crashing down, it's real. And I think what's happening is that we have all learned how to get down to business and take care of business. But we're being real with it. And, post COVID-19, I think we'll probably still be in somewhat of a virtual world. And I think for those of us that will go back into an office, we'll probably look at our counterparts and our employees in a whole different light. So now you see this person as a quote unquote real boy, real girl, real woman, man, whatever. And I think, as Sonia said, it will lead. It takes us as leaders, and now we're going to be even more empathetic. And I think what it's going to do is drive up our work value and our work ethics in the workplace.
Yeah,
I agree. I just wanted to add that we work with women who've taken years and years of gap. 2 years average to about 19-year gap, and that was never normal. You would look at a resume and you would think about, well, there's a gap, I can't interview this person. But I think COVID sort of, all these years, I remember being terrified, like Ginger said, if your dog is barking, and I wouldn't take a call from home ever because my daughter could come in. But today, to me, that has, my mindset has changed and it has become normal. And I think people have started to look at, I think one good thing that has come out is that gap has become, it's okay to have that gap, because a lot of women, of course, unfortunately have left the workforce. But those are some of the things that, there's, like Ginger said, it has become normal, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we just have to say, well, it's okay.
Yes, definitely. Ginger, you, in your work with veterans, do you feel, I talked a little bit about the beginning, different categories that people put themselves in. I think veterans is one category. I know we've talked in some of our earlier calls about women of color. How are those groups impacted in maybe a different way, and how can we create more inclusivity for some of those those groups of people?
Well, first I'll speak on the women veteran population. And when we talk about entering the workforce, prior to COVID-19, through our program, the Women Veterans Transition Space, we had already put in place a virtual model. We did things in person in partnership with Starbucks in the Starbucks store, but then we also got women veterans ready for the workforce virtually, because women veterans is a population that's always busy anyway. When you're transitioning out of the military, you're doing so many different things. You're looking for childcare, looking for a new job, looking for healthcare, looking for a new place to stay. So we were already in a quote unquote, virtual situation. So for women veterans, a lot has not changed. We're just doing more of the work in the virtual space that we were already doing. But then, as an African American woman in the nonprofit arena, the veteran nonprofit arena, for me personally, it has been extremely difficult, because it's a community that is dominated by white males. And that's something I think straight across the board. And I tell folks all the time, as women veterans interactive, we're part of the women's movement, because we're women first, and then as an African American woman, one of the leaders in this nonprofit space, it's been a challenge. So you talk about choose the challenge. I choose to challenge myself every day to get up out of bed and make it happen for the women veteran community. But I think the way we can make it better for, and I'm just saying for my space, for African American women leaders in the veteran nonprofit space, do exactly what LogMeIn is doing today. Invite us to speak, get to know who we are at Women Veterans Interactive, get to know who Ginger Miller is. And I tell folks all the time, when I tell my story now, I just tell my story. And then at the end, it's like, oh, and by the way, I used to be homeless, because, that's something else that we don't think about. But people use that as like a target, like on my head, like, well, maybe we can't trust her to lead a nonprofit because she was homeless. That was something that happened many moons ago, and unfortunately it's something that happened to folks who are transitioning, from the military. It's real, it's a part of who I am, but I don't think it should stop me from being successful, and I don't let it stop me from being successful. So as an African American woman, I know I have the challenges that I face every day, but I choose to rise to the occasion, because the women veteran population is so important to me.
Absolutely. Do you feel like there's even more pressure to overperform these days?
Absolutely. Jen, I've always felt that from day one. I've always been an over performer, overachiever, because you have to compete. And I think that's a topic that women veterans don't like to talk about, or women in the workplace, but you have to be competitive. You have to be strategic. And I think along the lines of my 10-year journey, it has made me somewhat overachiever. But honestly, as a African American woman, I just feel that I always have to look the part, dress the part, be the part, do the part. Is it exhausting? Absolutely. But again, I have to rise to the occasion. I have no other choice. What else can I do?
Yeah. So on that topic, and a little bit more of maybe a personal question, we talked about the past year sort of bringing this huge change in terms of culture and what it means to be either perfect or professional or just new normal. Do you feel that, and this is open to anyone, do you feel that you have the same pressure to be perfectly made up, or to dress a certain way that maybe followed an office dress code? I know personally I have a nice top on, and there's definitely slippers underneath my desk, and there have been for the past year. So I think that's one certain change that I've had. But what do you guys think about that, and how do you kind of balance that?
I'm happy to start out on that one. So for me personally, and y'all know this, I have a little bit of makeup on today for the first time in months. It's interesting. When we first started doing the remote working, fully remote working, I remember in the beginning, I was still doing my makeup every day, still wearing earrings, putting on perfume, even though there's literally nobody in my apartment to notice. And I don't know that the perfume is reaching you all through this medium, but it made me feel
someday,
better.
Sandra, you can build that into our product someday, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll work on it. So it's the routine of it. And then over time, I realized, you know what, I'm joining my meetings, and my male colleagues are joining the same way they always did, which is, t-shirt and jeans. If it's cold, there's a hoodie. But they're not worrying about their hair. They're not worrying about being professionally made up, And I thought, why am I doing this? I've reached the point in my career now where what Ginger just said really appeals to me, because it's really, you're pushing through, right? Like as the female leader in the spaces that we are in, we are pushing through. We are making room for ourselves. We are challenging the status quo. And I kind of felt like, you know what? I'm here now. I'm going to enjoy this, and I'm going to use it and just leave that space expanded for anybody that comes after me. So I made a conscious choice to stop wearing makeup in my meetings, to stop worrying about it, to let my hair grow out with the bleached part, and it wasn't looking great anymore. My eyebrows are no longer groomed like they were before the pandemic started. And I decided people are going to have to live with that. And to the men who are on the call, when we're asking, you're asking, how can you support? Rule number one, if a woman shows up in a meeting with you without makeup on, it is not appropriate to ask her if she's sick.
That's good advice.
Like I want to bring that down so that there's not this expectation on for people like Ginger or for Sonu that they have to always be 100% made up. Like, we need to normalize that women do not wake up looking like this. And that does not make us less effective as employees. That doesn't make us less effective as mothers. It doesn't make us less effective as friends. It's something we choose to do, and I'm not knocking it. If you want to do it, ladies. Like, I'm not saying anything against it, but I want to normalize that, because I think that's an unfair expectation. On top of everything else that we're dealing with as a pandemic, anybody feeling like they need to have their hair perfectly done and their makeup done, that's pressure we don't need. there's so much going on that is way more important. So, so I'm just trying to normalize it and using my space to make that normal. So, feel free, change it.
I think that also too does bring up something that we've touched on a little bit, but it's sort of that, like, is it really about how you look or when you work, or versus, how do you start switching the conversation to just what you're actually doing? And it doesn't matter what you look like or when it gets delivered, as long as it meets the time that it needs to be done in. But how would you, maybe even if it's talking to organizations at the highest level, like, how do you make that shift and convince them that it's not just butts and seats and a dress code versus people that can work outside of the 9 to 5 and in a way that works best for them?
I think it depends on the environment. I'm lucky to be in the situation I'm in, where I work for a company like LogMeIn that, one of our values is be real. So I have definitely been in a meeting with our CEO where I had pink hair, and that was okay, and I adore that. I love that I work for a company like that, and I do respect that, for people like Sonu and Ginger who are meeting with people and trying to convince people to work with their organizations, to donate, to work with them, to bring them in, to better integrate them. I love the social aspects of what they're doing. They have to be that professional. So I'm just going to lead the charge from within the company, that maybe then the next time Ginger meets with a LogMeIn, that the other people she's meeting with, she'll see, okay, no, these people they're real. It's okay. I don't need to put up this front. I think it ties back to that theme that you have for International Women's Day this year, with the Choose to Challenge. If everybody challenges, then eventually that becomes the new normal, and then we won't have that anymore, right? Like it's so important. Like, if you feel you can challenge even a little bit, you have to. Like, we're almost obligated, and I know that that's unfair because we already have so many hats that we wear. But as a female leader, I feel it's kind of my extra job to represent. So,
and Sandra, I just want to add to what you said, because I think it kind of be, and first of all, like, I always dibble and dabble in makeup, so I mean, but I do make a conscious effort.
I'm not the expert you are, Ginger.
Let me tell you something. It looks good on camera, but I mean, that's just, I think it's also just a part of who I am. But like you said, as the CEO of Women Veterans Interactive, I have to, I would love to just pop on, but honestly, I would probably not be comfortable. But you said a lot of things that kind of struck a chord with me, that's so true. And I wonder, if we flip the side of the coin with COVID-19, how many people really let their guard down because it's like, oh, it's COVID-19, so I'm just going to show up any kind of way. You know what I'm saying? Because, like, I think we talked about this in an earlier call. I saw a girl, she missed out on an amazing opportunity because she showed up for an event like this and she was not presentable. So I guess there are different levels of how you need to present yourself, even virtually through COVID-19. If it's just us, I may show up without pearls and red lips. I mean, maybe not. But I think when you are representing a brand, when you're representing your company, depending upon your company culture, because LogMeIn seems to be a lot like Amazon. Amazon will show up to a conference with a keynote speaker with the Amazon shirt on, jeans, and we have a great time. But I think as women, some of us have probably let our guard down during COVID-19 and just said, okay, I'm just going to show up with a head wrap. You can't do that. We don't want to see you, and I'm probably going overboard, but you should not show up to an event as a presenter with like a headscarf type of thingy on your head with like 300 people on the line. So I think, we have to be conscious of who we are even during COVID-19, relax, but don't just take it to a whole nother level. And your makeup looks cute too, Sandra.
Thank you. I really tried today for you, Ginger. I love what you're saying though, because I think it's that difference, and I love that distinction that you're making. I think we need to find out that new normal or that new balance for what professional means.
Yes.
And professional maybe shouldn't mean polished, right?
Correct.
Like the pearls, if you enjoy them, you should wear them, but maybe, like it should be where you have to stay professional. Like, let's be honest, you're going to be judged. Like, as much as we talk about being real and empathy and everything else, there is some level of judgment going on there. But there has to be that level of professional in there, whatever that means, right? Like depending on the level. Like I also, for an interview, I would probably be a little bit more cleaned up than I would for, you know, normal everyday meetings. But I think professional is maybe the one we should send to. It's just the question of what does professional mean, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. And I was saying that, you know, how you show up, like you said, how you show up is extremely important. And I think you have to allow women to decide what is it that they feel confident about. What does their show up mean? For me, it could be, you know, don't judge me on what I'm wearing today, or don't judge me on what my head is. I could, you know, my pet could have run out and I'm running after my pet, or I could have had a bad day with my daughter crying or having fever. Judge me on my communication, judge me on my thinking, judge me on the ideas that I'm going to bring, judge me on the solutions that I'm bringing to the table, judge me on, you know, whether I'm able to solve a problem or not. And if I'm not able to solve the problem, then don't judge me on that, because maybe I'm just having a bad day. So I think showing up is, you know, what does that mean? What does that mean for a man and a woman, right? And like you said, Sandra, men, you know, sometimes will just show up, and now it's become, you know, we women are starting to think about whatever you did 25 years in your career. Did that overburden you too much? I think it did.
Yeah, those are some really good points. I like that. Professional doesn't have to equal perfect. It doesn't have to equal polished. I think that's a really good takeaway here. One of the topics we haven't covered that I think we should is sort of the mental health aspects of both the pandemic, which hopefully we'll be coming out of soon, but I think also this virtual world. I think we all know stress and burnout can be very real, and a lot of companies are stepping up and have that mental health support. But how would you, what do you think women can do to help support one another, and again, bring some of these concerns up to maybe leadership at their company? And if we want to start maybe with Sonu, I'd love to hear from you, especially as you're kind of coaching women to go back to work.
Yeah, I have my friend who's a executive coach, and she only talks about burnout, and I talk to her all the time because, you know, we're working 18, 24 hours a day, and she always says you have to watch for that burnout coming, because when it does, it will wipe you out, and you can't afford to do that. And she suggests multiple ways to combat it. You know, I think in terms of companies and leaders, you really have to be able to offer perhaps mental health coaching, and it all goes back to the culture, right? What kind of culture, what kind of tone are you setting? Don't let the managers model the wrong behavior of working till midnight. Don't insist that everybody has to be on video conferencing. Encourage a day off when women need it. I love this concept of shared sacred sisterhood, and I think there should be a shared brotherhood too. You know, men and women both can be allies to each other. I think companies could offer paid volunteering time, because that is a great, you know, stress buster, mental release. Create a buddy system where you're not talking, it's not just work that you're talking about. We've all heard of Zoom fatigue, right? But maybe that's, you know, you have a buddy, you have a sisterhood where you're talking about, it's not deliverables or KPIs, it's about other things in life. So I think it's not just one or two things, it's multiple things that companies, and I think personally women have to set boundaries for themselves too, and say, no, it's 5 o'clock, it's time for me to get off my laptop and do something else that's going to prevent burnout. So I think it's a combination of things.
Yeah, agreed. I think the topic of this conversation is obviously that modern remote workforce, and if we can achieve some of the things that you just addressed to avoid that burnout and stress, I think we really do, as a company, we believe that a hybrid approach to work is important, and it does allow for that life-work balance, assuming you have the right tools and advice to make sure you get that balance. But I would love to hear from maybe each of you just quickly, what does the ideal future state of working look like for women, and how do we get there so that women and their companies are thriving? Maybe let's start, Sandra, let's start with you, maybe.
Ooh, I think it's an interesting question. I was just thinking while you were saying that, Jen, I was thinking, okay, well, what would that mean for me? What would I like to see, right? Just reflecting back on what Sonu just said about the mental health, I feel really strongly about that. It's been tough. It's been really one of the most intense years of my life, for sure. In addition to what Sonu was talking about, just having those, working for a company that allows you to find those moments for yourself, like building that ideal schedule for yourself. I think this idea of perfectly being available 9 to 5, except for maybe your half hour for lunch. I don't think I don't want that for the future. I want it to be a little bit more build it to be custom. I think that offers women a lot more flexibility too. Like, even though I'm here now alone in my apartment most of the week, I'm responsible for the housekeeping. I'm responsible for cooking for myself. I still gotta go shopping for myself. I'm in Germany. We're facing lockdown, so sometimes the grocery store's not open past 8 p.m. I have meetings till 8 p.m. Does that mean I don't eat the next day? You know, it's finding that flexibility to put a couple of hours in your schedule to take care of the things that you need to, and then just as long as you're still hitting your main deadlines, should be fine. I'd expect that from a company in the future. I think the other thing that Sana said that really resonates with me is this idea of leadership modeling the behaviors that they want to have for their employees. One of my favorite words that I was starting to experiment with before the pandemic was resilience. Like this idea of resilience as a concept of building your resilience as a person so that you can find ways to feel stronger and to grow even outside of your work environment, things that help you feel like you're making progress. I got a tip from a coach of mine because I have a coach through the company. She said, Sandra, you know, you need to do something that engages your senses and that keeps you from thinking about work when you're done with work for the day. And so we talked about that. And for me, it's cooking and baking and doing jigsaw puzzles. Because when I'm doing a jigsaw puzzle, it is literally impossible for me to do anything else because I'm engaged visually and I'm engaged with my fingers. Same thing for cooking, chopping all the ingredients. That's my distance that I need to have to then move on to the home transition. You know, like I have a home office. Like going out of the room doesn't magically make me forget about everything I had the whole day at work. And so yeah. I'd expect that as well in the remote workforce. The companies are a little bit more accepting of this idea that you set this boundary for yourself, and it could be flexible. It could be you do your 8 hours over the course of 12 because you're coming in and out of it. But when you say you're off, you should be allowed to be off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd add to that, Sandra. You know, as a businesswoman for the past 20 years, I've been driving to meetings that I, drive an hour long for a 30-minute meeting and drive an hour and a half back, which means my entire day is gone. Today, in that 3 hours, I could pack 4 or 5 meetings and I'm getting a lot more accomplished. So I think the key is for leaders in companies to realize what their demographics, what their population, what their workforce looks like, and what is the problem that's bothering them, or, women especially, what is it that they need? And I'll give you an example. About 15 years ago, like I said, our workforce is women. They complained. They said, we have to go back on a Friday and then we have to clean our houses, which means 5 hours to that. And then, you don't get enough time for yourself or your kids, or maybe to go out for a hike. And we said, well, maybe we can find a solution for this. So we have a cleaning service that goes to employees' homes, both men and women, every Friday for 3 hours, and it doesn't cost a lot. I mean, honestly, it doesn't cost a lot. But what that has done is that's given that time back to women and men so that they could do whatever, be allies for women. But you really think about how I think companies and leaders have to think about how can you be creative and look at your workforce and see what is it that they need, not a workforce from another company, but your workforce. What is their requirement? And I think that's how you sort of build that modern remote workforce for women.
And I'll add to that, Sonu, are you hiring? I would love to get that service. Even virtually, I would love to get that service. But, I think, moving beyond COVID, we can ask ourselves, how do we avoid employee burnout and maximize production? Because employee burnout is real, even virtually it's real because some of us don't know when to shut it off. So some of the keywords that I jotted down was flexibility, remote work, a compressed work week, a hybrid work model, customize the work week. And Sandra, I think you said that. And, what worked during COVID-19? I see a lot of companies that are saying, okay, we're not going back to that building. We're paying so much money for that building, but our production is at an all-time high with our employees working from home. But then you have some employees who want to go back to the office. When you talk about the isolation, they want to have that personal interaction with people, although it's not safe. It's something that, a lot of us long for. And then Sonia, when you talk about driving to those meetings, like I almost passed out because, I remember the days of driving in that traffic to Washington, D.C., to a meeting that was all of 30 minutes or 15 minutes if the folks decided they were not interested, and you get burnt out from that. So I think, taking a combination of what we did prior to COVID and what we're doing in COVID-19 is going to make the difference to a long-lasting relationship between employees and employers. I think we can definitely make a difference by asking the questions, what's working for you ladies, what's not working? And, Sonu, I'm going to forever be thinking about your company. You may see my resume come through shortly. That's amazing. That's amazing.
That is great. So I think, what I'm hearing here is that it's a lot of, it's being able to invest in the things that give satisfaction to employees, whether that's avoiding a commute to do more meetings because that helps your business and helps you achieve more, or reinvest in things like a hike. I think that's really important, just to have that flexibility. I don't think we realize how much time we spend commuting or doing those things that maybe can be avoided by working remote sometimes, or I'm constantly doing laundry while I'm working, which is my favorite thing about this. So I think, before we jump, we're going to move into some Q&A from the audience in a few minutes. But I think before we jump into that, I would love to talk just a little bit about sort of actions that people can take. I think we all know that acknowledging there's a problem, or this disparity between men and women at an organization, is usually the first step to making change. So how would you recommend that employees bring that up to leadership, and how do they ask for help, I guess, is probably the question. So maybe Sonu, we can maybe start with you, but would love to hear from all of you.
I think the first time someone brings up an issue, not judging them is a good way to is a good place to get started. Giving them a safe space to bring it up, right? And the first step is acknowledging it, then not judging them, giving them a safe space to bring it up, and then ensuring that there is an action towards the change. That is the key. And I think it comes down to listening. You listen completely about what the problem is, and then you make a commitment to making a change. I think that is extremely important. And then there's other things like let's offer paternity leave for fathers as well, right? Don't treat women differently, just treat them as humans, because and I think Sandra, you said celebrate their successes. I think that's really key.
I think jumping onto what you said, Sonu, I think the really important thing is I love what you said about if somebody's coming to you with a problem, your reaction should be to listen first and then respond thoughtfully, not try to convince them that it's not a problem. I don't think that that's helping. Yes, there will be instances where people are maybe perceiving something as a slight that wasn't intended as a slight, but that doesn't invalidate their feelings. And I would encourage everybody attending to really think about what that means. Like, just because it may not be the objective truth of what happened, somebody feels that way, and you need to work with how that person feels before you start worrying about whether it's fact, right? Like, it's coming from a place of insecurity or past behavior or a relationship that they've had with this person in the past. It's not just coming from nowhere. So, as Sonu said, listen first. That's the most important part. I think one of the things that I see, and one of the things that I encourage, I know that I'm anyway a lightning rod within my organization for a lot of the ladies. I know that people feel comfortable coming to me, and I'm thankful and I'm grateful for that, because it gives me an opportunity to use my position to actually change things, especially if it's something that's systemic. But some of my best conversations are really, with some of my male peers, where I gently nudge them in the right direction. And I do have an example that I'd love to share on that. So we have within the company, every time that something goes live and it's a significant release, we send out an email to everybody and celebrate the success of it. And they tend to always be written as if there's a man doing the actions. So with this new thing, he can do this. And when he does this and his thing, you see where this is going. And one of the ladies that I work with, she actually decided to write one of these emails where everything was her and hers. And it was so different that it stood out to me, and I was so proud of her for that moment, and it made other people think, and I could take that example then to conversations I was having with other male leaders and say, hey, did you notice Melanie did that? Oh no, I'm sorry, Melanie, for calling you out, but I didn't notice that, but now that you said it, it actually reads completely different. It's not the norm. I was like, yes, please have a conversation with your team. If maybe the next time they're sending one, they might suggest they might do that as well. And my engineering peer, who I dearly adore for this, actually made that an initiative for his managers now to go through to these people who are sending these mails and say, hey, consider not always saying his, say hers. And it's such a small thing, but it doesn't have to be something radical. And I think that that's something that we can all kind of embrace from this conversation as well. We don't have to change everything overnight. It's not going from one direction to the other completely extreme. It's these little nudges in the right direction where you just have that moment, that teaching moment, and get someone to be thoughtful and take a perspective from somebody else for a second. And that's what I'd hope for.
And I'll just quickly add that, number one, you have to acknowledge the problem. As Sonu said, you have to listen, but I think as leaders, we have to be open to listen. Put yourself in that person's shoes so you can fully understand. You can't take anything for granted. You can't take anyone for granted because a lot of things are always sometimes misconstrued if we're not communicating. Be considerate and always, I mean, I'm just a person, I'm just solutions driven. If there's a problem, we can fix it. As leaders, if you're wrong, admit you're wrong, take the hit for the team, and come up with that solution. Because at the end of the day, we want to work together. We want to make a better world. We want people to feel okay, especially in COVID-19. You don't want to be the cause of somebody else's demise because you truly never know what folks are going through in the workplace. What's going on. I mean, we probably know a little bit now because you can see folks' homes on Zoom, but we only let you in as far as we want you to. So for me, as my role as the CEO of Women Veterans Interactive, I just always have to have an ear to listen and a compassionate heart because women veterans, we have a lot of issues that some of us who are in leadership roles are dealing with. So I'm just always here to, acknowledge the problem, but find the solution.
Awesome. I think there's some great insights into there and exactly why we chose this theme of choose to challenge. I think there are little pieces in there that we can all take away. So with our last 10 minutes or so, I'm going to hand it over to Becky, our woman behind the scenes, who's been collecting some questions from our audience.
Great. Wonderful conversation, ladies. Thank you so much. We do have quite a few questions that have come in over the past 45 minutes. So I'll kick one off with this question. How would you counsel women in the workforce who face explicit and implicit discrimination from male counterparts? How do we do the hard work of confronting sexist discrimination openly? Does anybody have a response to that?
It's a tough one. It's tough, right? Because going back to what the three of us were just talking about, someone was reporting a problem, and the question is, are you actually listening, or is your first reaction to shut it down? And I think usually in that situation, there's kind of this ostrich approach, right? Like if we don't talk about it and we don't look at it, it's not happening. I think in those kinds of situations, if I was hearing that within, even LogMeIn, I would suggest to whoever that is that's feeling that way to reach out to someone that they trust. If it is one of the female leaders that they feel comfortable with, if it's another leader that they feel comfortable with, and have them be an advocate for them to kind of amplify their voice and make it a real topic. I don't think it's something that should be hidden or brushed aside. Like if your first approach is being brushed aside, but it's clearly this kind of a situation, don't let that stop you, right? Try another angle, find advocates within the company. I'm pretty sure that every company has a few advocates within it at least. Reach out to one of those people, even if it's just to have your feelings validated, to have somebody who's listening thoughtfully the way that Sonu said, so that you can come up with a plan together for how to address the situation and possibly how to change it and how to just get it into a different sphere. I definitely had a situation in my career where I had a manager who was extremely misogynistic, and I had a lot of issues with him. And the only thing that eventually let me get out of his control was literally switching teams. I had to find another mentor within the company and take a different job and change my career path because of this one person. And he was of the opinion that it was a personality problem between the two of us. And I had to admit defeat and go into another path. And, it eventually led me to something that I love and I'm happy for. But I wish I had had somebody to be an advocate for me in that moment, because the people I spoke to told me it was all in my head. So be an advocate for the people who are having that happen to them, and don't stop or feel that your feelings aren't valid just because the person who's terrorizing you makes you feel as if it's not real. Don't give up.
Sandra, I am so sorry that happened to you, and I'm going to answer, you know, this really quick, and then maybe Sonia wants to add something too. But I think, as companies, as leaders, as organizations, we have to create a culture where there is zero tolerance for any type of discrimination or harassment. Something like that has to come from the top, and it has to be policies in place to where, folks who this is happening to feel comfortable enough to say, okay, I'm being harassed. I need to report this, because they know that they're going to be listened to. And also, when you create that kind of culture, it will deter people from harassing others. So I think it's definitely a two-way street. It's not just, okay, so how do we, deal with the person that's being harassed, but how do we stop these harassers? And, military sexual trauma is at an all-time high in the military. Women are being raped in the military. So, DOD, they have their hands full. And for me, as the CEO of Women Veterans Interactive, we advocate for women veterans who have suffered military sexual trauma. But even more than that, we are there to give them the support that they need on the back end. So I think corporations and companies and organizations need to support, as you said, Sandra, have these advocates to say, okay, this happened to you. It's okay. We're in your corner. We're going to be here. We're going to fix this. Of course, through proper protocol to make sure that it was actually an incident.
Yeah, you both spot on, Sandra and Ginger. Absolutely.
Thank you all. I think the next question, we have many men on the line who are wondering, what's the one ask of us? What's the one thing we can do today to support women in the modern remote workforce?
I would love to take that one. We at Women Back to Work, we're kicking off this. It's called Be Her Ally, and we all know that women take disproportionate amount of domestic chores, right? We see it. I see it in my house. I work all day long. I come back. I wear my shoes and my home clothes, and I cook while my husband will go sit watch TV. And I've seen that happen for many years. And he is an amazing man. But he just doesn't realize it until I tell him. So I think we have to be able to sort of redefine the mental model about gender roles and responsibilities. And it's an approach where you value time equally for both men and women. And I think if you just did that and you rebalance domestic and family responsibilities, that would be a huge contribution, because it does help women succeed both at work and at home. And I think even at work, I've noticed that, when we have parties in the office or get-togethers, it's women that are cleaning right after. And I've noticed that for several years. And the men go back and go and we said, no, we've got to put a stop to that. So, well, nobody's walking away till the office kitchen is clean, because it's not just the woman's responsibility. So I think if there was one thing you could do is truly think about how you can support them at home and at work, and be her ally.
Sonu, I love that, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't just the women cleaning up, it was probably the women planning the whole party, right? Like, if we're going to go in gender roles, that would be my ask, is don't assume. I've actually made it a point in my career to refuse to take notes in meetings and to refuse to be the one that writes on whiteboards, because usually what's said is, oh, I'm sure you have nicer handwriting. So I always make it a point to get up, I grab the dry erase marker, and I do the worst handwriting I could possibly do, just to make the point that this is not appropriate, right? So I would ask the allies or the people who would like to be allies to just think about what Sonu said. There's these gender role assumptions that you're making that are kind of forcing this stereotype, or forcing these actions on the women that you're working with, or the women that you're living with. And it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate that women have the feeling that they need to know the entire contents of their pantry and the refrigerator in case they're in the store and need to pick something up or need to quickly cook something. And you think it's cute because we were the ones who realized we ran out of toilet paper. That's an unfair tax. Like, we have so many things in our head that we're the only ones who are aware of the domestic supplies. Come on, guys, you can help us with this. It's just as easy for you to see the toilet papers going out as it is for me. So I love what Sonu said. It's really just be cognizant about the gender role piece, and more than anything, listen. If a woman is trying to explain to you how she feels, she needed to get a lot of courage to bring you into that world and try to help you change your view of what's happening. So please don't start mansplaining or explaining how that's wrong for her or invalidating her feelings. Just shut up and listen, please.
Thank you. And I think one additional thing to add from my end, I have a colleague, a very wise co-leader of We at LogMeIn, and she says that one thing that men can do is show public solidarity. It's not enough to, after the meeting, to say, hey, that was a great idea. Speak up in that meeting to support the women, your colleagues beside you. We probably have time for 1 to 2 more questions, Jen. So how can we make our own unique experiences of maybe being at home, at work, with kids, all of these things we're juggling, visible to our colleagues? Is that our responsibility? Should we become more empathetic? What's your response to that for advice? And maybe Sonu, you can kick things off for us.
Could you repeat the question again? I just want to understand.
Yeah, so for so many of us, we have unique experiences, as Jen was sharing at the beginning. Some of us are moms, some of us are working alone, dealing with isolation. How do we open up to our colleagues about these different things that we're experiencing so maybe we can relate to one another better?
Yeah, I think it goes back to having a buddy at work, someone you can rely on, someone you can trust, someone you can pick up the phone, and it's not like a Zoom meeting where you can, tell them what you're going through. And I think there's definitely a different degree of acceptance within all our colleagues. And I think, as much as we try to get men to be our allies, I think men are allies, right? Many of them are supportive of what we're doing, and you're willing to pick up things that we are not able to do because you have to take care of a child. But I think asking for help in very clear terms. Sometimes women think that everybody should understand what they're thinking, and I think that's very hard. I think clearly spelling out what is it that you're really looking for, I think helps bring clarity to others, and then they're able to help you better.
Thank you, Sonu. Reminds me a little bit for anybody at LogMeIn about the remote working personas that we launched about a year ago, going into working fully remote. We have Slack statuses that we can put up to let people know, hey, I'm working with my kids right next to me, so that when people go to Slack you, they'll be aware of what you're doing. So with 2 minutes left, Jen, I would love to hand it back over to you to see if there's any final thoughts for those of us on the line.
Sure. Yeah, this was a truly amazing and inspiring conversation. I think the important thing to consider here is that while Women's History Month may be 1 month, this is something that we should continue to talk about literally all year round, every single day, in whatever we can. I know that the work that the 3 women on this panel are doing is a year-round job. And we appreciate them for doing that. I think we should all, again, choose the challenge and sort of step up and see where else we can make progress and make sure that some of the statistics that we saw at the beginning don't become long-term realities. What we've got here on this slide are ways to connect with all of us in our organization. So please do follow. I think we're all always learning and want to keep learning. So share tips, share your best practices, share ideas, share how you're choosing to challenge. But this has been great. So Ginger, Sonu, Sandra, thank you guys so much. Thank you very much for being a part of this conversation. For everyone that's joined in and listened and wants to be an ally, we appreciate you, and get out and challenge and have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.